If you're recently coming out of a toxic relationship and you still feel that emotional agony, you're just ready to heal and get past that, or if you've been out of a toxic relationship for a while, but you still feel like you have not really made any progress in your healing, stay tuned because this episode is for you. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel where we talk about toxic relationships, narcissism, and emotional healing. If you're new here, my name is Nailah. I'm a therapist and life coach, and I specifically work with women, helping them to heal and rebuild their life after toxic or narcissistic relationships. So if that sounds like you, take a moment, go ahead and hit the like, the subscribe, and notification bell to be notified every time a new episode goes up. So in today's episode, you are going to learn the 4 key steps to start your healing journey. One thing that I do know, even from personal experience, is that although you are out of a toxic relationship, you're maybe not technically together, you can still be heavily impacted by the experience. So it's more than just about getting out of the relationship, but it's also about what are we doing after we get out of the relationship that will really relieve us from the trauma, the stress, the pain that came along with that experience. So let's get into it. So the first step to starting your healing process after a toxic relationship is going no contact or minimal contact. First, let's talk about what going no contact means. That means what it says in the name, absolutely no contact with the person. That means no calls, no text messaging, no social media messaging, no checking social media updates about what's going on with that person, no communication via third parties, no emails, absolutely no communication with that person, and no checking up on what is going on in that person's life. Now, the reason for this step is that you cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick, okay? You cannot drink poison, something that's toxic. Say you want to heal, stop drinking the poison, but occasionally you're dabbling back into it. You're still going to be sick. You were still ingesting that toxic substance. And that is the same thing that applies when you are coming out of a toxic relationship. Right now, you are in a place where you are vulnerable, and that does not make you weak. There's nothing wrong with you. That is completely normal. Being in a toxic or narcissistic relationship, you're dealing with emotional abuse, and that is emotional trauma over time. And you're vulnerable right now. You're very fragile, and you need to protect yourself. You need to nurse yourself back to good health. And that means that you have to completely detach from the very same thing that was making you sick to begin with. Now, when you don't go no contact or minimal contact, and we'll get into minimal contact in a minute, but when you don't go no contact, you are more susceptible to further manipulation. People who are toxic, who are narcissistic, manipulative, any contact that they have with you, even if it's a simple message, that can unravel the progress of healing that you're making, right? So you need to completely detach. You need to be aware that you all are vulnerable. And I don't want you to feel like something is wrong with you for that purpose. What you went through was perpetual abuse. And even if you may not see it that way right now, as you go through your healing journey, you will be able to come out of that fog. You will be able to get clarity to understand what this person was doing to you psychologically. But you cannot come out of the fog if you are still connected to that person, because any connection to that person is exposing you to continued abuse, continued manipulation. So you want to relieve yourself from that completely. Now, when we talk about minimal contact, this is the alternative to going no contact. And this is only for those who share children with the toxic or narcissistic ex. Now, minimal contact is clearly in its name. That means you are having minimal contact with them, right? So you can use text messaging to communicate about the children, and communication should only be about the children. Communicating via text messaging or email for communication that you don't need an urgent or immediate response. And the only time you want to pick up that phone is when you do need an immediate response. If you have the ability to have a mediator in between, that would be even better. If you were married to the person and you want to work out divorce or separation paperwork or anything like that, still maintain no contact. Put your money together if you can, and have a third party, an attorney or someone mediate for that. But the only time you want to use minimal contact is if it is about communicating for the children. And again, minimal still means not picking up the phone for everything, text messaging, email. And the only time a phone call should be necessary is if you need an immediate response. Now, as we're talking about these steps, I want you to know that I understand that these may not be easy, right? Because in most cases, toxic relationships are relationships that have been around, that you've been in for a long time, right? For myself personally, I've been in toxic romantic and family relationships, but zoning in on the romantic part, I was coming out of a almost 10-year toxic relationship, and it took me a whole 2 years to completely go no contact. Now, let me explain that a little bit more. Going no contact could be easy for some of you in the beginning. It was for me. However, when they start to reach out, when they start to send emails, whether it's emails to curse you out or to apologize or to seem like they've had a sudden epiphany about how wrong they were, that is where the temptation comes in to communicate back to them. Even if you're not communicating to resolve the issues or to get back into the relationship, we as human beings, we have that desire to explain ourselves, and we want people to understand us. We want people to understand, look what you've done. Look at the problems you've caused. Look at how things could have been better if you were to do X, Y, and Z, right? We want to convince them. We want them to finally understand what we've been trying to tell them throughout the relationship. So again, this is all part of their games. This is all a part of their manipulation. And this is why it's so important to stick to going no contact. But it took me 2 years. So I do understand that it's difficult. And what got me to the point to finally maintain the going no contact is when I accepted the truth that this person was not going to change, right? And it was not my responsibility to convince them anymore about what they did wrong or how things could have been better, right? Or even how us separating could be more amicable. That I took that responsibility away from myself. And when you do that, that is when you can truly go and maintain going no contact or minimal contact if you have children. So the second thing that you can do to starting your healing journey after a toxic or narcissistic relationship is educating yourself on the dynamics of emotional abuse. That means taking courses, social platforms like where you are here with me right now, connecting with professionals, joining groups, just immersing yourself in the world of educating yourself on what emotional abuse looks like. Now, the reason for that is that because the world has different definitions about emotional abuse, depending on where you live, what country, what culture, what background. And when I say culture, it's not just about, your country, your region, but even your culture within your family, the culture within your circle, the norms, right? And if you were to ask me 10 years ago, would I ever tolerate any form of emotional abuse, I would have told you no, right? But that is clearly the reason that I even got involved in it in the first place. That is clearly the reason that I even got stuck in it in the first place, is because I didn't have a clear understanding about what emotional abuse looked like, and more specifically, what hidden emotional abuse looks like. It's very gradual, it's very insidious, and it can really slip through the cracks, where you don't even realize what you are gradually accepting and gradually tolerating with the best intentions, right? On being loyal, making things work, trying to help the person, trying to groom the person to be a better person. But all in all, it does not negate the fact that you are in an emotional abusive situation. And when you get clarity about what that looks like, it helps to validate that what you were seeing was not wrong, because let's be honest, sometimes our intuition is telling us certain things and we're, minimizing it and saying, oh, it's just me being, extra or paranoid or, whatever it is, right? It also makes you feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. What I saw, what I was feeling, there was a reason for that, right? So being able to get that clarity about the dynamics of how it works, it really brings you it brings you to a state of reality to understand, okay, this was worse than what I thought. But again, why this is the second step is because when you're fully out of the situation, completely detached, that is when you're able to start getting clear. That is, they call it coming out of the fog, because you really are in a fog. And again, if you are someone who is outspoken, strong personality, resilient, you may not think that you could ever fall into that situation, but it's possible. And we're human. We all have vulnerabilities. But being able to get clear about what the dynamics of emotional abuse looks like will bring so much clarity for you. The most confronting benefit about educating yourself on emotional abuse is when you get tempted to go back. And it will happen. It will happen. And again, it does not speak ill against you. It just means that you are still in a vulnerable state where the manipulation still has some form of control over you. And again, you're human. We all have vulnerabilities. But when you educate yourself on what emotional abuse looks like, that becomes very confronting when that person comes back to you or the feelings comes back up for you where you feel like, let me give it another chance. Let me try again. If you get really clear on what emotional abuse looks like, you realize this is a very destructive situation for me to be in, and that challenges and confronts you on making that decision to want to go back. Now, so far, if any of what we're discussing resonates with you and you feel like you would like more support around these topics, go ahead and click the link in the description box below to get access to my private membership group where we have live group coaching calls, live classes, and you will be connected with other women who gets it, who's been there and who are also on their healing journey. So moving on to the third step to starting your healing process after a toxic relationship is acceptance. Accepting that who you loved was actually an illusion. And I know this is a hard one. This is a really hard one. However, this acceptance will set you free. So what do I mean by that? An abusive person does not suddenly become abusive. That is a personality flaw. That is a personality trait. They showed you what you wanted to see in the beginning. They showed you an illusion. They showed you a mask. And it was only until they became comfortable after calculatively assessing the situation to say, okay, now I can start really showing myself. That is when the real them came out. So that mask that they showed you is the same mask that got you into the relationship. And even once they let the mask fall and started showing you their true colors, that mask that they would occasionally put back up, that is a mask that reeled you back in. That is a mask that made you hopeful that you would see the good side of them again, right? That they can do better, they will do better. This is a back and forth game that manipulative people play, and they will play it as long as you let them play it, right? So acceptance brings you out of denial, right? It forces you back to reality, and it also prevents you from wasting time and energy on waiting for that better person to come back, to show up again, realizing that that person was a facade. It was a way to get you and to keep you around. Acceptance is so deeply rooted in reality, because the denial itself is what keeps us stuck. And again, not physically stuck, but mentally and emotionally stuck. And that is why we're talking about this here today, is that healing allows you to break free from being attached to what has been breaking you. I know for myself, as I had shed tears for toxic romantic relationships, toxic family relationships, I had to gift myself the control to grieve the illusion, right? I had to grieve someone who really didn't exist, or let me say people who didn't exist from these different toxic relationships. And that gave me power. That gave me control over my healing journey, right? That I could accept that the good times that I saw, the generosity that I got, even though it was illusion, I can give thanks to God for having those experiences, but then bringing it back to reality that the actual individual was not real. It was an act. It was a facade. It was a form of manipulation. And again, that gave me control. That gave me control to put the focus back on me, to accept what happened, to be grateful and have gratitude for the good experiences that came out of it, the fun, the laughs, the generosity. However, accepting that that is no more, right? And the experiences were real, as far as they were real, they existed, right? The fun and the laugh and the generosity, but the actual individual and their intentions were not real. And accepting that reality again freed me and gave me the power and control, right? Because that's what we want to do as we heal, is take back the power and control for ourselves. That gave me the control to now focus back on Nailah and heal. And the fourth step to starting your healing process after a toxic or narcissistic relationship is rest. Rest, rest, rest. And this is something that I think is hard for some people to do. I know for myself, I consider myself quite ambitious, very goal-oriented, and I really don't like to sit still. I like to always have something that I'm working towards. But what I did realize after toxic relationships, it was like coming out of 12 rounds of a boxing match, right? Not physically, of course, but emotionally. And even emotionally, that can manifest physically in different physical, ailments as well. But you're beat up, you're drained, right? And it is okay to take a break at life. It is okay to take a sabbatical from work if you need to, engage in activities that are calming and relaxing to your nervous system, whether it be going for walks, getting fresh air, doing yoga, make sure you're eating healthy. And let me tell you, there will be days where you don't feel like doing any of it. you just don't feel like it. But again, I want you to take care of yourself as if you would take care of a newborn baby, right? A newborn baby is new, it's vulnerable, it's fresh, it needs all around care. And I know it's so easy for us to do that for other people, compared to ourselves, but you have to do it for yourself. If you really want to heal past this experience, not just get over it, right? That doesn't just happen with time. It's really about healing through it. This is such a necessary step for you to take, is to rest. You have to keep in mind, you don't want to underestimate the effect of toxic relationships, right? Again, toxic relationships involves abuse, which causes trauma, which in its simplest form is an extreme distressful situation, your emotional response to extreme distress, right? So for example, if you witness a bank robbery, that is an isolated incident, right? Yes, it's traumatizing, but it's a one-time isolated incident. When you're in a toxic relationship, in my experience, personal and professional, working with clients, those are usually long-term experiences, right? Not just weeks, usually not even just months, although a lot can be done also within those months, but it's usually years that people are in toxic relationships. So that is perpetual abuse, perpetual trauma. And even in the good times where you say, okay, but we had, a good week or good month, even in those times, your body, your mental state is still in some form of distress, because subconsciously, your body knows that that's not going to last. So you're still on edge. Even if you're not aware of it, you're still on edge, because you know that it's only a matter of time before that person does something again, says something again, to have, right, some type of conflict or issue, or extreme distressing situation again. As you are resting, I want you to keep in mind that you want the rest to still be a productive rest. And what do I mean by that? When we're sad, when we're down, we may be tempted, or it may feel good in the moment, to just isolate, to just do nothing. And while resting does mean sometimes doing nothing, you still want to pair that with healthy activities. Like we spoke about before, journaling, walking, yoga, just going out for fresh air, being around healthy people, right? And one important tip I want to say about that is that sometimes we have people in our lives that are considered friends or family or just people that we know, And those are automatically, just by default, because they're around, right, and we've been connected to them for a while, that those may be the people you go to. But I want you to be very cautious, very selective about who you choose to be around during your healing process. Because even though you are connected to some people by default because they're there for whatever reason, related, friends, colleagues, whatever, not everyone is conducive to your healing journey for whatever reason, right? You want to be around people that are a good influence on how to manage stress, how to manage pain, and they bring some type of calmness to your nervous system, right? Let's be honest, there are people that you may love, may be fun, make you laugh, but they're not the most calm people to be around, right? And calm doesn't have to mean boring. You can still have fun, but you want to make sure that these people, after you leave their space or they leave your space, that you feel better. You feel more calm. You feel more clear. They're not bringing up topics that may trigger you, right? And again, sometimes they may not be aware of it and you can bring it to their attention, but this is not really the time to teach people. This is really the time to just protect yourself, right? Even if the intentions of the person is not with malice intent, you still just want to be protective and selective about who you allow into your space as you are resting and as you are healing on a whole. All right, guys, so at this point, you've learned the 4 key steps to starting your healing journey after a toxic or narcissistic relationship, which you can start today. We spoke about going no or minimal contact. We spoke about educating yourself on the dynamics of emotional abuse. We've spoken about accepting the person that you love was an illusion. And we spoke about rest. I want you to remember that you do not have to remain stuck. You do not have to remain emotionally, psychologically stuck to a toxic experience, all right? These are the steps that I use, and I can attest that they have worked, that I have been able to grow past the experience, I have been able to heal past the experience, and now here I am with great honor sharing that with you. If you find any of these steps challenging for you, I am here for you to share that with. You can go ahead and put it in the comment section below. Again, we do have a private membership group where we also connect with other women on the journey, so you can also share that there. Just go ahead to the link in the description box below to get connected, and thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you in the next episode.